Hi, this is Melissa, and I'm back to tell you the story about me going back to work. This one's interesting. So, my original brain injury was in 2018. Then I had another fall in 2020. About 2023 is when I decided that I felt like I was ready to go back to work, and financially, I had to go back to work at that point. So, it was time to do it. The first job that I applied for was at a denture office, and they did offer me a position. I accepted it. I started there. I was so excited to be back at work. It was a little difficult getting back into the whole computer, all the computer systems because I hadn't worked with them in a while. But I was really enjoying it. The person that was training me was extremely knowledgeable, very good at her job. Not very friendly with the patients, but that's okay. I thought maybe my kindness would rub off on her. And I definitely knew I could learn a lot from her. So everything was going pretty well. And then the second week in, I think it might have been on a Wednesday, she said something and it emotional regulation's hard. It hit me the wrong way. Plus she was just so unpleasant to a lot of people. I raised concern about it, and after I raised the concern about it, brought it up and talked to her about it, she started giving me the silent treatment. So she gave me the silent treatment for the rest of the day on Wednesday, all day on Thursday. And then when I went in on Friday, I finally went in and talked to the manager and said, listen, she's giving me the silent treatment. This is crazy. Like, how are we going to do this? And then he brought her into the office, talked to her, and then we both went out again. And that's just how it was. She kept giving me the silent treatment. He wasn't going to tell her not to. And, I was all worked up. I was teary. I was, just flustered. And so I just got up and said, this isn't for me. And I left. So 2 weeks at my first job, and I left in an emotional huff. Oh, and then when I got home, when I was leaving, I said to this girl, I said, I sure hope you heal. And when I got home, there was a Facebook message from her twin sister who also worked at the office as an assistant, not up front like we were. And it was very hateful. I mean, she cussed so much in it, and it was just awful. I sent it to the manager, and then I also sent it when they gave me like the exit interview via email. I sent a copy of that too to say this is who you're employing at your offices, and I never heard anything back. So that's fine. So I applied for some more jobs, but nothing was really interesting to me until a few months later, and it was another dental office, and I started working there. When I went in for the interview, I just heard so much laughter. It sounded like it was so joyful. There were two women doctors who worked there, and then 10 females, assistants up front, things like that. My position was going to be up front. So I started, and at first it was great. I was learning, and there were some things. For instance, if someone, had a certain procedure done and we needed to file it a certain way with the insurance, sometimes it would take me like 3, 4, 5 minutes to realize, oh, I need to file that paperwork. And so if it didn't happen in the first 30 seconds, someone else who had been there for a long time, would be like, and get up and do it. They wouldn't say, hey, Melissa, don't forget to do this. Maybe they did the first week or two, but obviously they didn't have patience with me. And I wasn't doing things fast enough for them. So that was kind of the first bit of turmoil that happened. And then it was really hard for me to work there, basically for the reason of the way that they talk to each other. I had been out of the workforce for all these years. I'd been reading the book, The Four Agreements, learning about how words matter, the words that you say to other people, the words you say to yourself, the words you say out loud. Words matter, they carry meaning. And, that book really resonated with me. So that was my train of thought in all this. And then I get there, and these girls talk to each other like this. You're so stupid. I hate you. Ugh, I hate you. You're so stupid. Just over and over all day long. That's the way they talk to each other. And they loved each other. They really did. They didn't not like each other. They really loved each other, but I just didn't like listening to it, and I definitely didn't participate in it. Some people had names on their chairs. One was like cat lady, old cat lady. I forget what the other one was. One girl had fake eyelashes and they called her lashes. And the one who was lashes put a name tag on my chair that was CBD bitch. And like, bitch is just not a word that I want to use to describe other people. I definitely don't want to use to describe myself. It's a female dog, and that's the only tense that I want to use it in. at this point in my life. So that was a real turnoff to me. And I just, like I said, I didn't fit in. They're talking about crime documentary or shows all the time, and I'm watching, documentaries about consciousness and, um, quantum physics and things like that. So we're just on totally different pages. I decided that that job wasn't for me. I lasted 6 months, and I found another job, while I still worked there. So I gave my 2 weeks notice. It wasn't an emotional outburst or anything when I left. And I started working as a traveling orthodontic assistant. And I was so excited when I started. I loved, loved, loved it. It was so great to be back in people's mouths. The only trouble with that position was that since it was a traveling position, I had to drive 45 minutes each way. So 45 minutes to get there, 45 minutes home, and it was an 8-hour day. So that turned it into pretty much a 10-hour day. And I wasn't capable of that at the time. I mean, did it. I did it for 4 weeks, but after the first week, I knew, if it doesn't get any easier next week, I need to do something else. I can't do this driving. And so the next week came around, and I remember on the Tuesday, I called my best friend at lunchtime. I was laying out in the grass by a tree, and I was, just trying to get some sunshine and rest. And I remember telling her, I started crying, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted. I can't do this. I was so sad. So that's when I decided. It was actually the next day I started scrolling looking for other positions, and I saw the address pop up of this orthodontic office that I had worked at when I was 21 years old. I had worked at it again around the time I was 30 for a brief period of time. And then actually the day before my accident, my big fall, I was working at that place. I wasn't working that summer, and the orthodontist that was there at the time, asked me if I would like to fill in just a few days a week because one of the ladies there wanted to spend some time with her kids during the summer. So I said, yeah. So I was working there a few days a week. And when my accident happened, anyway, I see this address. And so I call, and I'm like, hi, my name's Melissa. I used to work there, and I see that you're hiring. And this person who answered the phone, I'd never heard of, talked to, anything like that. So it turns out that the original orthodontist that I had worked for had retired, and a new orthodontist had taken his place. This woman was his wife who answered the phone. She worked up front, alongside another woman who worked up front who had been there for 35 years. So I worked with her all the different times that I'd been there. And she was so intelligent, so knowledgeable, just whip smart, knew everything there was to know about orthodontics, probably even a little bit more. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say she knew more than the doctor, but I'm telling you, this woman had 35 plus years of experience, and she was very smart. Anyway, so I start. Oh, I should have listened to my intuition on this one, because the day that I was going in for my interview, I was on my way there. I was about 10 minutes away, and I get a call from the doctor. I'll just say his name. I'll say Dr. J. I get a call from Dr. J, and he says, hey, just want to let you know I'm running behind. I had to run an errand in the Northland. And I was like, oh, that's okay, no problem. I just have to be back, on time to pick my son up from track at 4:30. Oh, okay, no problem. So he finally gets to the office, and this office is so beautiful. That's why I wanted to work there. It's on the third floor in basically Leawood, Kansas. They call it Overland Park, but anyway, third floor, so there are trees everywhere. It's like a tree house. It is awesome. I love it so much. I can't even put it into words how much I love this office. So we're all there at the office, he and myself, and he starts to interview me, introduces himself, and then he gives me these two timed tests to take. So I take those, which that seemed really weird, especially the ones he gave me. They were just odd, very odd. That's okay. I took them anyway, and then we talked, and there was no clock in the room that I was in, and I kept thinking, man, it feels like it's getting late. It feels like it's getting late. And so I mentioned again, I just need to make sure I pick up my son on time. Oh yeah, yeah. He keeps interviewing me, asking me questions. I don't think he did it maliciously. I think he just was one of those people who, well, I did find out he definitely is one of those people who just isn't able to keep close track of time. Some people just aren't good at that. He was one of them. So ended up leaving the office at 4:30. My son was supposed to be picked up at 4:30. I had to drive, 25 miles to get him. So I get to the school where he is, and he's the only student left there. There are four track coaches, because none of them can leave until every student has been picked up. They are I mean, I can almost see steam coming out of their heads. They're so mad that they're there. And, I was so embarrassed for him, for myself. And, that should have been my first clue. Like, this guy does not make, you know, his employees a priority. Because I wasn't even his employee at this time. He did offer me a position. And then another thing came up about my start date. I needed to start at a certain, I gave my 2 weeks notice at this other office when he offered me a position. But then he changed my start date to a week later. So I went basically a week without any work. Then it just kind of progressed from there. The people who were working there, one of the girls that was working there, she was very good assistant, very good, very, very, very good, excellent at her job. And she was getting ready to leave the job to go be a dental assistant, or I'm sorry, dental hygiene school. She was going to go to dental hygiene school, which great, good for her. She told me all kinds of things about, she was there for the transition from Dr. W to Dr. J. And Dr. W treated his employees like gold. He was just a wonderful, awesome man, just a great employer to work for. And Dr. J, he was a wonderful man too. When it came to, talking to people, patient care, he was a great orthodontist. He was a great person to work beside, chair side. I was the patient coordinator, so it was great to work with him in that aspect too. But when it came to running the practice, like being a boss, he operated from such a place of scarcity that it was just dumbfounding to me. Every operatory, there were four chairs, and each chair had a sink beside it. And under the sink, there was like a little metal place for Kleenexes. And he would not replace those Kleenexes because they were too expensive. So for the whole 6 months I worked there, we didn't have those Kleenexes. Patients couldn't reach down and get a Kleenex. We'd have to walk over and get a paper towel and bring it to them. It was just odd. And then we had this camera that he spent, over an hour giving us lessons on how he wanted the intraoral pictures to be taken and what he wanted those pictures to look like. Those are pictures of inside your mouth of teeth. So, you got to get up in there. This camera, I'm telling you, it weighed like 7 pounds. It's the one that was there when I was 21 years old. And so it was super heavy. So here you are with the camera in one hand, a cheek retractor or a mirror in the other, and you're trying to take a picture. There's a ring light on the edge or the end of the camera, for the good flash, and it wouldn't work. You had to kind of like, you had to kind of bump it with your arm while you were in a patient's mouth. And then you'd press the button, the first picture wouldn't take. You press the button again, the second picture wouldn't take. Bump it again, take. It was just awful. So it was really hard to get those excellent pictures that he wanted when we had a camera that didn't work, but he wouldn't spring for a new camera. Although he did get an espresso machine for the patients, but it was in the break room where the patients couldn't go. But his wife used it a lot, so she was happy. But I'm just saying that money that he spent on that espresso machine would have been a lot better on a camera. So anyway, at that point, I knew, just the way he treated his employees. We didn't get paid on time. He blamed it on the bank. He just was not a good boss, put it that way. So I knew my time there wasn't going to be for much longer, but I didn't realize how I was going to go out. It was a very emotional day when I left. We had gone to do like a employee bonding thing the day before, and it was supposed to be at Top Golf. We ended up just going out to eat. And when he does things like that, he doesn't want to pay people while he's taking them out on an excursion. The job I had after this, we had a whole day of a taco truck and team building, and we were paid for all 8 hours of that where we didn't work. So this is just the difference in employers. Anyway, we went to this lunch, and then the next morning he said something in the huddle. We had a morning huddle every morning, and he said something, and just the way he said it just hit me the wrong way. Here comes that emotional regulation problem again. It hit me the wrong way, and I just could feel how much he didn't respect the employees. He just did not respect his employees, and I did not want to work for him. And so after the meeting, I was talking to the assistant, that was so good, and telling her like, what a jerk. Can you believe he acts like this? Can you believe this is how it is? Like, this is it? Why? He's so nice. Why can't he just act like a normal boss? But he couldn't. And she at that point, she could have talked me down a little, but she liked to stir the pot. And so she kind of pushed me a little, pushed me. She's like, yeah, he's such a jerk. I can't believe you're going to work here. Because she was getting ready to leave. She had her end date. She knew she was gone. She had maybe a week or two left. And anyway, I got up and I stormed my happy little butt into his office, and I said, the way you treat us is ridiculous. You want us to take these anyway, I just kind of basically let out about 3 minutes worth of what I didn't like. And then while I was doing that, my face turned bright red, my eyes filled up with tears. And at that point, I was just like, you know what? I need to get out of here. So I just left his office and walked out of the office. He came running after me, Melissa, wait. And I was like, nope. I was down the hallway. I was out of there. And, after that, I did send him a message and said, I am having trouble with emotional regulation. Maybe we should sit down and talk. But we did sit down, and it turns out, it just wasn't the right fit for me. He was never going to change. So after that position, so let's see, we had the denture place, the dental place, traveling ortho place, this ortho place that I wish I could have stayed at because of the trees. And then the last job that I had was actually in the same building with all the beautiful trees. And it was an endodontic practice. And when I went in there to interview, I took a test, and I found out later because I did get hired and I started working there. And the first few days that I worked there, I actually had to give the test to other people that came in because we were hiring more than one person. And then I would see their scores. And, so then one day I asked, I said, what was my score? Because I wanted to know. And I had there's one score higher that you could have had, and I was right underneath it. And most people that I took their stuff, nobody got into the category I got. They all got under that. So I was feeling good. I was like, yeah, man, I'm smart. Look at me go. Time test, I did that well on it. Got it going on. What I didn't know was, so after that first week at that office, I was put to my location where I was going to be, which was in Lee Summit. And uh, I get working on the computer. I'm answering phones. I'm doing good answering phones, doing, confirmations, things like that. But once you get into it, they have three different systems just for pop-up messages. So there was a pop-up message called Weave that was for all of the front desk people, all the managers, things like that. There was another one called Blue Note that was the doctors in the back, the assistants in the back, and the front. And then there was another one called PBS Messenger, and that was for everyone. So messages could pop up all the time. And when it came to multitasking, it was hard for me, especially because when we would get a phone call, to, get this information from a patient, there were probably 25 to 30 points of detail that we had to record. Their personal information, information about which tooth it was, their general dentist. I mean, there was a lot of information to get. And so we're having these pop-ups, and, I did make a lot of errors. Um, they actually printed out the first time I got written up. They printed out all the errors that I made. 2 pages. I was so sad and so embarrassed because I was really trying my very best. I couldn't believe that I had made that many mistakes. And a lot of them were little. They didn't cost the company money, and they were all, things that could be easily fixed. But somebody had to fix them, so it took time from someone. Uh, so I was just really sad about that. And now I've lost my train of thought a little bit. You know what? I'm going to keep going with this video. I haven't learned how to edit yet. So anyway, let's see. Oh, this job was crazy. It was crazy. They had cameras everywhere, like every single place, up front, in the back, in the break room. The bathroom didn't have cameras, and the doctor's office didn't have cameras, nor did the operatories, but everywhere else was under constant surveillance. So I remember my first week at the location that I worked. I had a hangnail or something, and so it was like 10 till 5. My work hours were from 9 to 5. So I went into the back and got my purse out of my locker, and I brought it up and took care of my hangnail and put it on the floor beside me. I was the only one there. And then the next morning when I come in, the local manager at that location, she comes up to me. She goes, Melissa, I just want to let you know we don't take our purses out of our lockers at all during work hours. And I was like, oh, okay, sorry about that. I had a hangnail. There was only 10 minutes left, so I didn't think it'd be a problem. She's like, no, we clock out and then we get our purses. I was like, okay. Okay. So, whatever. I knew that they were watching very closely, apparently. And, I don't know how much later it was, a couple weeks later, I wasn't feeling well. I went to work. I never called in sick to this place. I never showed up late to this place, not once. And, like I said, I was trying my very hardest to make this work. Anyway, I was sick this day and my brain, my head was hurting and I couldn't concentrate. I knew I was going to make even more mistakes. So there was no reason for me to be there. So I sent a little message on the messenger thing to the big boss in Overland Park saying, I feel terrible. I need to go home. I can't be here today. And she didn't answer, didn't answer, didn't answer, didn't answer, didn't answer. And I'm like, "What?" I know she saw this. I know she is watching the camera. She pulls them up all the time. She knows what's going on here. And so I thought, you know what? I'm gonna go get my purse out of my locker. That'll get her attention. So I march back there. I grab my purse. I bring it up front, set it on the counter. Sure enough, immediate message. So that was just crazy. Anyway, I ended up, that job ended. I did not have an emotional outburst. I was very proud of myself, especially because this woman who was my the basically the office manager in Overland Park. She's the one who came to actually let me go. She was such a miserable person. Everybody who worked there, at least in the office where I was, they just like their stomachs hurt before they came to work. All this woman liked to do was just point out errors all day long. She never said anything positive, only negative things. Everybody knew she was watching them all the time. One girl moved locations, and when she moved locations, she had, since she actually moved houses. She moved from one area of Kansas City to another, and then she wanted to move from one of our office locations to another. They did let her move, but between the interim, she applied for a couple of other jobs. Well, I guess when you apply on Indeed and you get a position, which she did, that's how she got the position that she was in. I guess our manager was able to see anything else that she applied for, which I didn't know that's how Indeed worked, but apparently it was because she brought her into her office and said, "Hey, I just wanted to ask you, have you been applying for any other jobs?" And of course, this girl said no. And she's like, "You're lying to me. I can tell you applied for this job, you applied for this job." That's just weird. Anyway, she came that day. She sent a message saying that she would be there at 1. There we had gotten a new computer the day before, and when you get a new computer, you have to, I guess, readjust everything. And so we had like a check reader that didn't work right away, all the different things that we plugged in the credit card machine. So this man him and his wife were paying for his root canal. And this was on a Thursday. They were paying for their root canal after we got this new computer. And I put it in and, she ran the card and it didn't work. And so I said, "Oh, let's try it again." So she ran the card again, still didn't work. Nothing popped up on my screen. So I entered it manually. That time it worked. So I printed out the receipt, gave it to her. Then I get to work the next day and the manager there at that office, she says, "Why did you charge them 3 times for their root canal?" And I said, "I didn't." And I said, "Who was it?" And so we look and I'm like, "Oh yeah, remember that's when the credit card machine wasn't working." And she was like, "So you didn't check the log?" And I said, "Well, no, it didn't pop up like anything went through, so I didn't think to check the log." And, she didn't really say much, and I could tell it wasn't going to be good. Then I saw her in her office talking on her cell phone, and I knew it was to the other boss. And then I get a message pop up saying that the other boss would be there at 1 o'clock to have a meeting with her and myself. And so I knew that it was coming. That was it. That was the end for me. So I, got all my books and everything, my training materials. I put in the shredder everything that I didn't need, and I was ready to go. She got there. She told me, that mistake was too big of a mistake to make, even though we refunded that patient all the money. Um, yeah, so they let me go, and I told her, I reiterated that I tried my very best. I'm sorry it didn't work out, and I left on really good terms there. They forgot to get my key that day, so I had to take it back to the actual Overland Park office, and I just tried to be very kind and nice, and yeah. So after that, I was very upset because I had tried my hardest, and it's embarrassing, to my family, my kids, who, they're watching me go through all this. Hopefully, they're proud of me and they think that I've done well. They knew how hard I worked and how hard I tried at that job. But now I'm currently not working. The only thing that I do now is help other people who are going through this by coaching. And hopefully I can make that a full time. I want that to be my full time purpose. I want helping people to be my full time purpose. I want to help people feel better. I want to help them dig themselves out of the depression that they're in. I want to help them with anything that they need, find resources. I want to be there just as a listening ear. if that's what they need, because sometimes that's all you need. And anyway, if anyone out there can use anything like that, please let me know. And please share this video with your friends. If you know of anybody that has a traumatic brain injury, or a friend who has a family member that has a traumatic brain injury, please share the other video with them as well. And then this one if they're having trouble working. But thanks for watching. Guess I'll see you next time. Bye.